You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with Jacob Morrison.
Let's talk about the coal miners' strike. We'll spend a few minutes on that. The coal miners had a huge rally on Wednesday. Way more than 2,000, I think maybe 3,500 union members from across the country came to support these workers. Lots of unions. And what was interesting about the crowd that Hamilton Nolan pointed out, you should read it. Read his article for In These Times. Hamilton Nolan wrote an article for In These Times about the rally. He noted that this crowd was diverse in a way that's not like corporate fiction. It wasn't people plucking, one Asian and one black person and one woman and one gay and putting them all here for a corporate ad. It was a natural thing that this crowd was racially diverse. It was diverse in gender. It was even politically diverse. And all that diversity did not create a conflict. He said that he had people, when he was interviewing them, that made it a point to tell him, I'm a Trump guy. And then he also interviewed people who had on T-shirts that said, labor for black lives or something like that. You've got a huge range, and I know for a fact there were socialists in the crowd, and I know for a fact that there were conservatives in the crowd, okay? You've got this huge range of political, and anarchists, I believe. You've got this huge range of political ideology in the crowd, and they were all there united for a real purpose, not some superficial, it wasn't some superficial thing. It was like a real thing that they were there for, to support these miners in their fight for better wages and working conditions down 2 miles below the surface of the earth, fighting for a better contract against their exploitative company, Warrior Met Coal. And that's really, really beautiful. There was gospel singing. There were popsicles. There was water being handed out. I mean, it was a beautiful place to be.
It was, and I want to just point out that everyone there was standing in the Alabama heat. It was very hot. I'm still sunburned from other day going down there. But like you said, Jacob, this was really an inspiring event to see so many people. And the South was very well represented. We had sisters and brothers from Tennessee, from Georgia, South Carolina, all over. We had some of our Yankee brothers and sisters made the long trip down to Brookwood. You name the union, you can just about find them there. And it really was a great event. So all credit to UMWA for helping to put that together.
Absolutely.
And, it's just an inspirational thing, and that is the promise of the labor movement, being able to transcend some of those divisions to unite around our common interest.
Right. And so we've got a couple more updates for you. We've got some bad news for the miners, and we've got some good news for the miners, and then we're going to talk about how you can help. So make sure you stay tuned to the Valley Labor Report. We're going to be giving you the rest of the update on the coal miners down in Brookwood. Stay tuned.
You're listening to the Valley Labor Report.
On the coal miners' strike. I talked about the rally that took place on Wednesday. You should read Hamilton Nolan's dispatch in These Times about that. Now let's talk about the good news, the bad news, and how you can help. We'll start with the bad news. The bad news is that there was a new modified injunction placed on the union and their allies, and increased penalties placed on the union and their allies. What is the modified order? The modified order states that there can be no more than 10 people on a picket line. This is something, the number has kind of fluctuated, but it's absolute nonsense. There has only been 2 times over the course of this strike that the striking miners have prohibited scabs from coming in and out of the mines. In my opinion, they could do that more for all I care, and this would still not be warranted. But only 2 times absolutely does not warrant this kind of order being put out there. Okay? It simply doesn't. Those 2 times, having that happen 2 times, and then the government coming in and prohibiting how and when and where and how many people can speak and make their discontent known to their employer. That's absolutely, government tyranny, big government nonsense. Is what that is.
I mean, and what pisses me off is you have people who want to whine and cry because they've been told to wear a mask in public, and I don't want to get off on that subject, but there are people who say they are victims of tyranny. They are being oppressed by a dictatorship because they have to put a piece of fabric on their mouth when they go to Walmart. That but have nothing to say about being restricted to go to the picket line, being restricted to demonstrate against a greedy vampire of a company, and that's just asinine to me.
It shows the difference in what the corporate bosses want you concerned about and actual issues, right? You hear so much about the masks and oh my gosh, the masks, and look, I hate it, and frankly, I still don't wear masks, okay, where I don't have to, and that I just don't want to. I'm vaccinated and I don't want to, okay? Now, but I don't go crying about it, and if people ask me to wear a mask, I'll wear a mask, okay? It's just it's not a big deal. There are more important things. If you want to rant about government tyranny, there are so many things that you can rant about. But I mean, gosh, get your priorities in order, you absolute babies. I mean,
if that is the worst thing that happens to you today, is someone tells you to put a piece of mask on your face, if that's the most obnoxious thing, if that's the most oppressive thing that happens to you today, well, then you've had a pretty damn good day. Because most of the rest of us are dealing with debt, we're dealing with bills, we're dealing with police harassment, we're dealing with problems that real people have.
Yeah. It's childish.
Sorry to get off on a tangent here, but it does tie into the broader theme here of what you just said, of what the bosses and the media want us to be concerned about versus what's actually real and happening to real people.
The injunction also prohibits people from, quote, being under the influence of alcohol on the picket line. And, that's dumb. I think you ought to be able to drink a beer on the picket line. I like beer. I thought that was a big conservative thing a couple years ago when Kavanaugh was I thought everybody said I liked beer. Well, I like beer. People should be able to drink beer on the picket line, okay? It also prohibits people from shining flashlights on the picket line. And it let's see, what else? It also, so the injunction doesn't do this, but some of the sheriff's offices have taken it on themselves. It's either Tuscaloosa or Jefferson County. I can't recall which one it is. But I've been told by the miners down there that one of the jurisdictions has said that they can't call a scab as they cross the picket line. I mean, again, these people
I thought that was protected by our First Amendment.
Seriously.
That you could call someone a scab if you wanted to.
You could, yeah. I mean, I thought that there was this whole big, this big culture war issue about... Are they going to
cancel the miners for using the word scab? Are they canceled by the cops? Is that what's going to happen here?
Yeah. I mean, PC, woke, social justice warrior cops down in middle Alabama making sure that scabs don't get the damn feelings hurt. I mean, give me a freaking break. Give me a freaking break. So that's the modified injunction. And we've also got increased penalties for the and increased penalties for violations of the injunction or violations of the law. I talked about this with somebody the other day, and they were like, well, look, they should, if they're going to do civil disobedience knowing that they're breaking the law, they should go to jail and they should get the news coverage for that, and that's what Martin Luther King did. And yes, of course, that's what Martin Luther King did, and that's what they're going to do. But that doesn't mean that that the state should come down even harder on them when they're fighting for a just cause. What is happening here is that the state is artificially increasing the penalties for breaking the law in acts of civil disobedience against an unjust employer. That is wrong. That is absolutely wrong. And so what are those increased penalties? For any future conduct in violation of the court's modified injunction, the court will issue the following sanctions: 1, $50,000 for the first a $50,000 fine for the first violation. $50,000.
That's just wild.
A $100,000 fine for the second violation, and imprisonment of up to 10 days for persons in leadership roles who are shown to have planned, supported, participated in, and or encouraged the violative activity. 3, for all additional violations, a $200,000 fine and imprisonment for up to 30 days for persons in leadership roles, blah, 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 blah. Also, for any future conduct in violation of the court's modified injunction by an individual, so not by the it lists the defendants there, but if somebody else goes down there and violates the thing, like so, if Adam or I did, then we would be subjected to a $50 fine for the first violation, $100 and 5 days in prison for the second, and $200 and 15 days on the third. That's fine to me. Okay, that's like I can pay a $50 fine and I can go to jail for a night. But that's
my
issue.
Headphones weren't working just now. I didn't really hear what you said. So,
right, I know that you didn't hear. I
haven't looked at it, so if I were to accidentally end up down there, I can just plead ignorance.
That's right. Yeah, he didn't actually hear that.
Not at
that
all.
Part.
But we ask a lot in the labor movement, and of course you may have heard the song about whose side are you on, and the local law enforcement. And judges, Alabama's judges, Alabama's politicians, they have made it clear whose side they're on. And it's not on the side of these miners and their families. It's the side of Warrior Met, which is a conglomerate of corporate vampires out of New York City.
That was the bad news. What is the good news? There is some really good news. Like I said, that rally on Wednesday was good news. Also good news is Warrior Met's financial report. Why am I smiling about Warrior Met's financial report? That financial report showed that Warrior Met has had less than half of the productions year over year. So that means that they have produced less than half of what they did at the peak of the pandemic this time last year. The second quarter of 2020, we were in the peak of the pandemic, the peak of the shutdowns, the peak of people being scared and things like that. Warrior Met produced half of what they did during that time. Okay, that means huge profit losses. That means they're really going to be feeling the hurt. That means the strike is doing its job. And so the question then is, who is going to be able to hold out longer? And the miners, I believe, have the determination, the will, and the community support. The support from the people in Brookwood, from the local grocery stores that are giving them discounted groceries, the local restaurants that are discounting their foods, the local thrift stores that are helping them out, the labor movement in their community in Alabama and in the nation writ large, who are donating hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars to their strike funds. I believe the miners are going to be able to make it one day longer than Warrior Met is willing to go, and that is the goal, and that is what this financial report from Warrior Met for the second quarter of fiscal year 2021 makes that belief more likely to become a reality, and it made me happy to see it.
And it dispels some of the myths that are being pushed by the company, because the company line was that they really weren't worried about this strike.
Mm-hmm.
We've got scabs, they can do the same work for the and. Some of their management have even implied, we could run these same mines with a fraction of the workforce. And, clearly that's not true. And I think it was great that this came out the same week as this rally, and just seeing that the strike is working. And I think that's why it's so important. That's why we keep talking about this issue, and it's why we keep encouraging any of you who can to donate to the strike fund. So we raise money for the strike fund because they do need help. This is not cheap to stay out on strike this long and to support these families.
The union is paying $1 million a week.
Yeah, I mean it's wild, the expenses that come with this, and unfortunately it's not cheap or easy to put up a righteous fight. But they are putting up a righteous fight, and we've seen just really inspirational work that they are doing. And I want to credit, Hayden and Braxton. Both of them were on a for the first time ever, mainstream media, I'm sorry if I stole your thunder, Jacob, but mainstream media actually reported on this. ABC News did a great segment Thursday evening in their primetime news. They interviewed Hayden Wright, they interviewed Braxton Wright, they interviewed the vice president, Larry Spencer. They did a great job advocating for their cause, and I appreciated ABC News for finally putting something out there and kind of breaking the silence in mainstream media. And I don't think that would have happened
without people like Kim Kelly.
Yeah, people like Kim Kelly,
like Max
Alvarez, Real News Network, Means TV, More Perfect Union. In these times, these sort of independent news outlets who are independent journalists who are really trying to keep these stories alive because they don't want to talk about it on CNN or MSNBC or NBC News. These are not the stories they want to talk about because their sponsors aren't pleased by it. Doesn't necessarily attract some of the same culture war clicks online. So really credit to all the hardworking journalists who've kept this story out there, and of course all credit to the miners and their families for holding the line, and we are with you. We will remain with you.
How can you help? You can donate to the Strike Fund, and you can donate to the Strike Pantry Fund. You should follow Hayden Wright on Twitter, HaedenWright on Twitter. Her pinned tweet has the link to the Strike Fund that is administered by the union and the Strike Pantry Fund that is administered by the auxiliary. The Strike Pantry Fund, as you can... its name is self-explanatory. It pays for food and clothing and essentials and stuff like that for the children and the families of the striking miners. And the Strike Fund is a fund that is divvied out in addition to the $350 a week that they get in their strike checks. They also add the supplement, whatever they can from the Strike Fund, to those weekly payments. And so you can donate there. You can send a letter or call or email your representatives. Those are in the state Senate, the state House, or the U.S. House of Representatives or the U.S. Senate, because there has been a complete and almost, and I'll get to that here, almost a complete silence from the political class about this strike. So you should send a letter, tell them to support these miners, put pressure on the company, but especially the Republican ones, because lately we have been seeing some Democratic support. In fact, the chair of the Alabama Democratic Party spoke at the rally. He said, when he introduced himself, "I'm the chair of the Alabama Democratic Party. Don't hold that against me." I thought that was funny, but he spoke in support of them, and he said that he was willing to do what it took to help them, what he could to get them a fair contract. And the Republicans, who always talk about how they care about coal and coal miners, they had better be willing to do the same thing. The Republican, even if they don't represent Brookwood, they ought to, because I guarantee you that your state representative or your congressperson, they do not limit their subjects of comment to things that directly affect the district. I would be willing to bet that they talk about critical race theory. I would be willing to bet that they talk about China. I would be willing to bet that they talk about this or that or whatever the culture war issue of the day is. So you should tell them to make this their culture war issue of the day, okay? And also ask your media to talk about it. If you live down in Birmingham and you listen to Matt Murphy on 99.5, you should tell him to talk about it. If you live down in Mobile and you listen to Jeff Poor on 106.5, you should tell him to talk about it, and talk about it in a positive way. Support the coal miners. You should tell your media. And those are just the conservative talk radio hosts that I know. You should tell your liberal talk. You should be writing to AL.com. You should be writing to the Alabama Political Reporter, Decatur Daily, Tuscaloosa News. All these places, you should be telling them to write these workers' stories and make sure that people know what is happening and how they can support them, and to put real public pressure on this company, because they are not treating their workers right, and their workers deserve to be treated right. That is it for our update on the coal miners. We are going to be right back to wrap it up with what happened a couple weeks ago in Southern labor, and maybe if we've got time, give you some updates on Huntsville. Stay tuned.
You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with Jacob Morrison.
If you want to see what we are up to throughout the week and get our snide quips about the news of the day, then you should follow us on social media. We are on Facebook at facebook.com/The Valley Labor Report. We're on Twitter at Labor Reporters. I'm on Twitter at JacobM_AL. And if you missed part of the show and want to go back and watch it later, you can search YouTube for The Valley Labor Report and subscribe to our channel. You can go back and watch the full show there, and we clip segments and release them throughout the week. We do upload the program on more than 11 different podcasting apps. So to see if we are on your listening platform of choice, you can go to thevalleylaborreport.transistor.fm/subscribe. We've got a website where you can buy our hats and stickers. That's thevalleylaborreport.org. We've only got 2 hats left. We are down to 2 hats. So the next 2 people that order a hat will be the last folks that get one. I don't know when we're going to get another round. So if you want one of those hats, go ahead and place your order, thevalleylaborreport.org. And finally, if you appreciate our work and want to help us stay on the air, then the best way that you can do that is throwing us a couple dollars a month on patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report.